On this episode of the Houndsman XP podcast, we are talking bullet selection. I'm going to admit something right up front. I've never been a big ballistics guy. I've never been an ammo expert. You're going to hear me talk about that in the podcast. So I'm asking the questions that maybe you have never asked or were afraid to ask. We're going to boil down selecting the right handgun with the right ammo and the importance of doing that when we're out there hunting bigger game, whether it's bears, hogs, lions, whatever you're after. We're going to break it down. I brought on Caleb Barnett from Underwood Ammo. Underwood Ammo is producing high quality ammo. We're going to break down the different types of ammo. We're going to talk about hard cast versus flat nose versus mono versus hollow point. We're going to compare calibers, what's popular, what's effective. We're going to do this all in a way that anyone can understand it. So if you have been thinking about purchasing the right handgun in the right caliber with the right bullet to be effective while you're out there chasing them hound dogs, or maybe you've been packing a shooting iron for years, but you're not seeing the performance out of bullets that you think you should, even when you're carrying that around that big bore hand cannon, and yet stuff isn't reacting the way you want when you pull the trigger. We're going to talk about over-penetration, the safety hazards. A lot to think about, a lot to talk about in this episode of the Houndsman XP podcast. And like always, folks, the Old South Dog Box is rocking. We're going to get the tailgate down. It's time to dump the box. Hunting public, generations of excellence. All right, so in this episode of the Houndsman XP podcast, we're going to take a dive into a controversial topic. We're not talking about what kind of truck you drive or what color hound you hunt. We're going to get into something even more controversial, and that's what caliber of handgun you choose to carry. And we're doing this right now because we're on the eve of bear seasons all across the United States. I know a lot of people out there are getting geared up for bear season and things like that. So I started looking around at different handguns, and of course, being in the bear woods with multiple people, I see people carrying an array of things, everything from 454s to 357 Magnums and different things for competent and efficient bear hunting. And so when I started looking around, I reached out to Underwood Ammo out of Illinois, and I'm happy to have Caleb Barnett on the podcast with us to talk about handgun calibers, bullet selection, and all the. We're going to throw you right under the bus, Caleb. You're going to have to sell us on it.
Well, it's an honor and a privilege to be on here with you. So very honored, and Underwood is very honored to be on this with you. And just to talk about our product, talk about what we have, what's our offerings. And this is truly a delight and a pleasure just to talk about ammo. It's a great job to have where you get paid to talk about your favorite thing there is to do, and that's shoot guns and hunt and all that fun stuff.
Right. Well, we're going to test you today because we're going to get into some tech talk. We're going to geek out a little bit about some of these things. I'll tell you what kind of drove me to this. Even after being a law enforcement officer for 30 years, Marine before that, I've hunted my whole life. You know, I was looking around and realized that when I start talking about foot pounds and velocities, and I never cared about any of that stuff. I've shot thousands of rounds through handguns, but my gig was point the gun, it goes boom, it hits what it's I'm aiming at. And of course in the hunting world, then I wanted clean, efficient kills. But then I started looking into some of the more traditional handguns and the rounds that were used. Like, we're a long way from Dirty Harry and 44 Magnum being the most powerful handgun in the world, and I started thinking and wondering if that was necessary to carry a 10-inch barrel 500 Smith & Wesson to kill a bear. There's been thousands of bears killed with 44 mags. And so I started looking around for a handgun for myself, and that caused me to start diving into ammo choices and looking at that sort of stuff. And I thought, man, I wonder how many more people are wondering about this. And I started researching, and Underwood just kept popping up. Underwood, Underwood, Underwood. And I reached out to you guys and you said, heck yeah, we'll come on. So here we are.
Yeah, and it's a pleasure to be here. And you know, I tell guys all the time, I like wheel guns, even being born in the '90s, but wheel guns are definitely not as popular as semi-automatics or striker fire pistols. And
Yeah.
nowadays, in bullet technology, which is awesome, is you don't necessarily have to have a 500 Smith & Wesson to take down a bear. You know, would you like to have one possibly to make sure you are able to successfully um, do what you need to do while you're out there on that hunt? Yeah, definitely understand. But as you stated, who wants to carry around a 10-inch barrel or 8-inch barrel and they're only limited to 7 rounds or maybe even 8 rounds or less than that. 44 mag is still very popular. So is 357 mag. But it's expensive. It's not cheap to shoot, and so people see cost, limited rounds, sometimes hard to find. I mean, look right now on your websites. I mean, not just even our ammunition, but any ammunition website, and we are one of the few that has 357 mag in stock. It's hard to find 357 mag anywhere. Underwood Ammo has it. We have it in stock. We did a huge run on it again on several different grain weights, but you know, if you go looking around for it, it's kind of hard, or you're going to pay a premium for it. Same thing with 41 mag. You know, 41 mag is almost a dinosaur now. Nobody shoots 41 mag besides a few people. It's a niche market, but guess what? People still need 41 mag.
One of our hosts, Heath Hyatt, is a dinosaur. He still carries a 41 mag.
41 mag. That's hard to find nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have it. We have it in stock. And people walk in on the street, off the streets, and they're like, you guys have 41 mag still? And I'm like, yeah, we make it all the time. You know, and then we're in stock on our website routinely with it. Now, it is a harder one for brass and components to do, but we still are able to successfully do it. I mean, in 2021, we did probably, I would guesstimate 4 to 5 pretty big size runs on different grain weights on 41 mag. 44 mag is very popular. We're in stock on 44 mag. So we still do all those things. We understand that there's a market for it. 454 Casull. You know, we understand that. 460 Smith & Wesson. But semi-automatics and the striker fire world has become very popular, and bullet technology as well, where you can carry more rounds, less weight, shorter barrels, and still get the job done. And so we understand that, and that's what the market calls for nowadays. Everybody wants 10 millimeter now. 10 millimeter is obsolete in the 90s, or late 90s, I should say. Early 2000s, everybody shot either 9 millimeter, 40 Smith & Wesson, or really 45 ACP was really popular, actually. So you shot 45 or 40. Now it's the opposite. Nobody shoots 40 ever. Nobody, you know. It seems like everybody forgot about 40 Smith & Wesson. So people either go 9 millimeter, 10 millimeter, and some still shoot 45 ACP. But 45 ACP is definitely not as popular as it was in 2001, 2, and 3, and 4. Most law enforcement agencies, as you alluded to, you being law enforcement, they're carrying 9 millimeters now, you know. So, you know, bullet technology has really advanced from the 70s, 80s, and definitely the 90s to now where you carry more, lighter firearms, faster target acquisition, and gets the job done. So I'm happy to be here and talk about whatever you want to talk about. I'm excited. So let's get to it, whatever you want to start with.
I've got a whole laundry list of things I want to run through here, and I maybe lay down a little more background. You know, it doesn't matter if you're carrying a 500 Smith. If you're shooting aluminum tinfoil balls at it, you're not going to kill it. You know,
Right.
And that's why I started looking at. I just recently purchased a 44 mag for my personal carrier. Most of our hunters and most of our houndsmen are going to be carrying a rifle, and that pistol, a lot of times, is a break the glass type moment. You know,
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm by myself. Maybe one person in the party is carrying the rifle, and they're down the mountain behind me. But I've got to take care of this situation now. Maybe I'm in danger. My hound's in danger. Whatever it might be. Most of the time, when I see handguns being used, it's not the primary weapon or platform to be trying to take a bear. But I know that there were thousands of bears taken with a lot of different calibers prior to some of these bigger bore handgun calibers coming out. And that pushed me to look more at bullets and, terminal velocity or terminal damage or whatever you want to call it, penetration. And that's what I want to talk to you about, is matching the most important things when we're thinking about the job we need to do to have the right bullet in the gun, because we don't need as big of a gun as we think in that break the glass moment to do the job if we select our bullets properly. Would that be
That's
accurate?
yeah. That's 100% true. The famous saying is there's no such thing as stopping power with a pistol. If you want to talk about stopping power and real stopping power, you talk about rifle or shotgun, and it has a lot of validity to that. However, we are able at Underwood Ammo to manufacture and produce rounds that are SAMI specifications, unless we are making something like a plus P plus, which nobody, there's people that make plus P plus. It's not just Underwood, and Sammy does not recognize that. But for everything else we make, as far as in standard pressures and standard loads or plus P loads that Sammy does recognize, we make it all within spec, and we've seen great success with it with pistols. We're very popular in Alaska, very popular. Those guys love our ammo, and they're killing things a lot bigger than black bear. They're killing grizzly. So
Right.
if I know certain things will work great on grizzly and a pistol caliber, I definitely know it's going to work fine on black bear and smaller game out of the pistol when you're out hunting or backpacking or trailing, whatever you might be doing. I got a lot of confidence in what we do and what we produce, and so do we. And our projectiles speak for themselves, honestly, and we'll love to get into that today as well.
That's an interesting thing you bring up right there. Is a lot of our audience is out there with their hounds in times of the year that it's not legal to take bear.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing this in grizzly country. If you look at that Yellowstone Basin country, northwest Wyoming, southeast or southwest, northwest Wyoming, southwest Montana, even eastern Idaho, right there. That's grizzly country. And while you might not be packing a rifle with you, then we can talk about how you can carry a handgun with confidence if it's loaded properly.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So what do you do what do you do there at Underwood, Caleb? Let's set up some credentials for you.
Oh, well, I like to say I'm nobody. Titles.
You're the guy they
because
refer
people
me
get
to
into
you.
titles nowadays, and everybody comes up with these great titles and these great long accolades, and it's just like, okay, what is that really? Like, tell me, what do you do? So I got hired in. I got called actually from the owner of Underwood. It's kind of funny. He called me, and I've been shooting and using Underwood for a long time. Probably since 2015, I would say. And the owner, had a great relationship with him just because I'm just an enthusiast. I hunt, I shoot, and I knew the type of ballistics that Underwood produced. And I always used to joke and be like, you know what? Just let me work here part time. I'll clean up ammo. I'll do whatever it takes. Just let me travel to SHOT Show with you. Let me go to the NRA conventions with you. Let me just go do that. I don't care. You don't have to pay me. Just pay me in ammo. Pay me in ammo and let me travel. And we used to laugh and joke about that all the time. And I've done a lot of training and testing and things like that personally. And I just like I'm a little bit of a gun nerd. I'm a ammo nerd as well. And he knew that, and we and him have always talked, and we go back and forth on what works, what doesn't work, what works best in different applications, and trying different things out. And one thing is, we're just not afraid to fail. So I do a lot of the firearm training and testing at Underwood. Anytime we're testing or training a new product, I'm always throwing in the fire. Hey, go see what the grouping looks like. Now we have our loaders. Our loaders are the people who produce the ammunition. They manufacture the ammunition. They do all that fun stuff and good stuff. And they have to shoot groupings. They have to shoot testing. They have to see what the powder drop is. They have to see all that good stuff and see if they're hitting the target velocity. And if they're not, we have to fix whatever the issue is out of all of our test firearms. Now, however, what I do is I will go back and I'll say, hey, we got a new projectile. We want to try it out. We want to see how much penetration we can get. We want to see how it groups. We want to see if it opens up fully, if it's a hollow point, all that fun stuff. So I get to do all the fun things. And I deal with a lot of the dealers and key accounts and the key account holders. And I talk to a lot of the wholesalers as far as in what's coming up, what we have coming out, and then also just selling the products. So I kind of do a lot of bit of everything, and I truly enjoy it. It's been honestly a blast, and one of the greatest decisions I've ever made in life is to come work there and do what I do now.
Ah, cool, man. So you're also the guy that when this stuff doesn't work, you're the guy that hears about it, right?
Oh, my goodness. Believe me, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, in short, yeah. Long story short, yes, definitely. You'll be amazed some of the calls I get. Is there issues sometimes? Everybody has them. But will I get a call because I got ammo 4 years ago and um, the primer is nickel plated as the brass because our brass is nickel plated. But now we're getting nickel plated brass with a brass, primer. So what's the issue? And I'm like, well, if you haven't heard yet, but there's a pandemic in 2020, so 2021 it's hard to get primers. So
Yeah.
we had
Yeah.
to do a little something different with primers just to ensure that it's still living up to our quality and our testing. And if they pass, they pass. If they don't, we don't put it out. But you like the shooting, you like their ammo, so sometimes you're not going to get that beautiful nickel plated primer. Sometimes you're going to get a brass primer, but it works just the same and just fine. You'll be amazed some of the calls I take and I get.
Imagine. Imagine.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think we ought to start with, that person that maybe has been thinking about, hey, it wouldn't be a bad idea for me to have a handgun to
Yeah.
carry. And specifically we're not going to talk about self-defense and all that stuff. That's a whole different podcast for a
Right.
different podcast company. We're going to keep it in hunting and specifically large game hunting.
Okay.
And bear specifically. But let's talk about bullet selection. And I think we just start there by talking about the difference between hard cast, flat nose, mono, and hollow point.
Yeah. Easy.
Can we just talk about those 4 different bullets
Sure.
and their applications?
Definitely. So the first one you mentioned was hard cast. Hard cast is honestly our top 5 popular projectile that we sell, and different caliber, especially 10 millimeter. And I'm gonna circle back a lot to 10 millimeter because 10 millimeter is coming so popular. And we sell a lot in some of the pistol, the revolver configurations for pistol as well. But the hard cast in general is becoming very, very popular. A lot of people still sling big, thick pieces of lead. There's guys out there that still loves the 500 Smith & Wesson. And we make hard cast of 700 grain, and they love it. And I'm thinking, it's not fun to shoot. It's not fun at all to shoot. But will it get the job done for big game? Oh, definitely. And so with the hard cast, it's a polymer coated bullet. It's a polymer coated projectile. The Brunel hardness on it is over 28, I believe. Don't quote me 100%. I know it's over 26 for sure, but I believe it's 28 or 31. I'm getting my numbers mixed up on the Brunel hardness, but we have it on our website. It's very, very very much so. You don't have to worry about deforming. You don't have to worry about the lead shavings coming off in your barrel. Because the number one question I get, honestly, probably I get this question 10 times a week. Can I shoot hard cast to a Glock? Because Glock says they don't like lead in their barrels. And I'm like, yes, it's a hard cast. It's polymer coated. It's more than fine. It's safe to shoot through that Glock. And the reason why certain companies with that type of rifling barrel say not to shoot soft leads because people don't clean them. So then the soft lead builds up in the guns, it mucks up the guns, and messes up the rifling. So then we're talking about accuracy and velocities are not where they should be and what they should be, and now you have a serious issue in your hand. You don't have to worry about that with our hard cast. We take pride in what we do. We take pride in our hard cast. We came out with a new one here recently because it used to be the lipstick color. People used to call it the red lipstick. Right. Now it's a black cherry coated hard cast. It's a little bit better with the coating. We have tested it numerous of times, and every configuration of caliber, if that's 44 mag to 357 mag to 10 millimeter to 9 millimeter, we test it. And what the thing is cool about hard cast, if I got a second to speak about it, is even though it's old school because it's a lead bullet, it penetrates the farthest. It has, for the most part, the best sectional density on whatever caliber you want to shoot. And when I talk about sectional density, I'm talking about wound cavity and the cavitation. How wide of a wound cavity are we talking? The higher the density, the better wound cavity we're talking about. And so they usually have, in whatever caliber configuration you're talking about, the best sectional density. And it penetrates the deepest. It penetrates the furthest. You're thinking about, sometimes people say, well, man, that's a big bullet. For example, in 45 ACP, we do a 255 grain bullet. And people are like, man, that's a lot of lead. It's only moving on 45 ACP, I believe. I have to check it. But like 900 and some odd change feet per second when we're talking about 45 plus P. And
Mm-hmm.
then when you get to the 45 Super, it's close to 1,000 feet per second. I think it's at 975. I'm pretty good with remembering all these numbers. Some of them I might flub a little bit, but double check it. And I'm pretty good with them. And people are like, well, it's moving so much slower. How can that penetrate so deep? But you have to think about it in a sense, and I always try to give people the most basic application. Think about a freight train. If a freight train is going 30 miles an hour and it tries to run through whatever it's going through, and you compare that with a Corvette that's smaller but faster, and let's say the Corvette's even going 60 miles an hour, guess what's going to go further? That freight train, because you have more mass, more momentum going behind it. I'm not trying to get into physics class here, but that's why. And there's really, I love to say the Hardcast is almost unstoppable. There's not much that's going to stop it. So when you hit bone density, tissue, sometimes going through the meatier part of your bigger game, if we're talking moose, we're talking elk, we're talking black bear, even grizzly, that's what you want to use for that, is because it's going to penetrate very deep. We got some of it penetrating over 50 inches, which is astronomical. And it's moving quickly. It's moving quickly for a big piece of lead. And when we pull it out of different things that we've tested it in, and it's hit several things. I mean, we've hit wood with it. We've hit some scrap metal with it. We've done all kinds of things and seen all kinds of things. Even hitting the steel plates when we out testing, it doesn't deform. Well, you get a little bit of the coating to kind of come off a little bit once it hits, but it doesn't come off in the barrel. So if you have a rifle barrel that has like the Glock style, I mean, it's the most popular style barrel there is. If you're that type of a barrel, you don't have to worry about the lead shavings coming off where it's squeezing that bullet, and you're worried about, oh my God, is lead coming in my gun or into my barrel. That's not an issue at all. So when we're talking about grizzly country out in Alaska and Wyoming and Montana, those guys love in 10 millimeter our 200 grain or 220 grain hard cast. You know, we're talking about energy. We're talking about almost 700 foot-pounds of energy that's coming at you. And
we're going to compare. I've got all the stats here. We're going to compare 44 to 10 millimeter.
Okay, sounds good. I love it.
And I'm going to ask you questions of how that all transfers.
Good. I'm glad you got the stats pulled up, because I'm not going to cheat, but I'm glad you're going to cheat.
I am cheating, believe me. The thing that I noticed about everything I read about hardcast, I've done some tests myself, is that nose forward penetration. You know, where it doesn't deviate, it keeps traveling because it keeps its form, it keeps its shape. It's going to continue to travel in the direction that it came from without turning sideways. You know, a lot of times a hollow point. Well, let's just go into let's talk about flat nose, and then we'll talk about mono and then hollow point. Let's just keep transitioning through.
Yeah. So you want to continue to talk about the hardcast, or you want to go to the next one?
You got more to say on hardcast?
So, well, you were actually talking pretty good about how it continues to keep its trajectory. You know, it doesn't matter, and that's exactly why. And that's exactly why it's so popular. And people like to get into like the meat plate and things like that of the bullet and the profile of it and the flat nose of it. And I tell you what, it definitely does what it says it does. Deep penetration and no deviation as far as, and if it hits bone mass or anything like that, it's going to continue. It's going to break through and keep on going. I mean, it's a very it's a freight train. I call it the freight train of ammunition, honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Good stuff, man. All right. So tell us about like jacketed flat nose ammo. What kind of performance do you expect out of that? And is it applicable for this?
It is
for our conversation.
You know, it's kind of the best kept secret, because a lot of people don't really understand. They see full metal jacket as we're talking, and they think, oh, that's just paper punchers, or that's just for range ammo. And we do have a range supply, but that's a round nose. That's a whole different ball game between the round nose and the flat nose. And we make the flat nose for hunting applications and woods carry and defense. And it penetrates very deep. It's not going to penetrate as deep as the hardcast. But what I do like on the full metal jackets is it's penetrating very similar to a hardcast. It does not deviate, and it does not deform either. Have I seen some more deformality in that than I have the hardcast? Yeah, because it's not that hard piece of lead and doesn't have the Brunel hardness as it does. But as far as in retaining its weight and its shape, it has done a great job on that. We're talking about 40 plus inches of penetration with that. And it's not for target ammo. It's simply, honestly, for hunting. It is honestly, if people don't want to do hard cast in the barrel, if they say, you know
Mm-hmm.
what, I hear you, and you say that the lead is fine in my barrel, but I don't want to shoot lead. I don't like lead. It's too heavy. It's I feel like I still getting shavings in my barrel, and you're just nervous about lead, right? That's fine. That's fine. That's why we offer you a full metal jacket, flat nose hunting round, so you don't have to worry about that. It takes all those worries out of the world, and you can worry and focus only on putting your sight acquisition where you need to put it, and shooting what you need to shoot. So very, very similar. That's a great question. A lot of times they're lighter projectiles, so they're moving a little faster, and so a lot of times your energy level is a little bit higher for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you start looking at your foot pounds of energy and still your velocities, sometimes it's to people a little bit more impressive than the hard cast, because you're able to get a little bit faster of a bullet. And you get some guys who still believe, hey, if I got the speed and I still got a good size weight behind it, there's still nothing that's going to stop it. And then in testing and showing, that's a very accurate statement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How does that compare? How do these two compare? Why don't you tell us what a mono is?
So our monolithic bullets that we're talking about are a solid copper lineup. So it'd be the extreme penetrators. Now some people say, well, they're a little bit pricier than the hardcast. Yeah, they are. They are, and there's a reason why. It's a solid copper bullet, and we're talking about machining these things. The flutes on these bullets, and people always call them screwdrivers. They say, "Oh, it's a Phillips screwdriver head," and
Right. It
what
looks
it
like one.
does, yeah, and people love them. People love them, and I love
Yep.
them. They're actually my favorite projectile personally, and the reason why is because they retain their shape 100%. The flutes on them they actually make them travel about 30% faster inside of the wound cavity. And no, they don't expand. They don't open up. So people say, well, what is the great benefit of using it? So I'll tell you, the penetrators are geared for hunting. They're geared for deep penetration. They're giving you the same type of penetration, or similar, I should say, to the flat nose full metal jacket, and close to the hard cast. It doesn't penetrate as far as the hard cast, but what
Mm-hmm.
they do is they're faster, have more energy, and they what makes them cool is they perform off of the fluid dynamic. So you're like, what the heck does that mean, Caleb? So what makes it cool is, let's say I'm out hunting, and let's say I have to shoot through two tree limbs between them, not shoot through them, actual shoot through the limbs,
Mm-hmm.
but shoot between them, or maybe a piece of, let's say, bark it hits, or let's say a piece of leaf is brushing up against it, or whatever it might be that brushes against it. It's not going to change the trajectory of that bullet. That's one that's cool. Also, if I'm geared, let's say example, uh, 10 millimeter, 140 grain extreme penetrator. I believe it's moving at 1,500 feet per second, or 1,550. It has like over 700 foot pounds of energy. That thing was traveling, and let's say I'm geared to get 45 inches of penetration. It's geared to get 45 inches of penetration. It does not matter if a piece of bark hits it, a tree, a leaf touches it and brushes it, hits it. It's still going to give me 45 inches of penetration once it enters the wound cavity of that animal. And so people are like, well, how does that? Why is that so cool? Because if I shoot, for example, a hollow point,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm using a hollow point for hunting, a hollow point at times can expand prematurely on impact. So let's say I hit a tree bark, or let's say I hit a leaf or something like that. What it's going to do is it's going to start expanding. I'm already going to
Mm-hmm.
start losing my energy. And let's say I was geared to get 15 inches of penetration. Let's say I'm going to get 17 inches of penetration out of that hollow point. Now I've lost that penetration depth, and it could perform like a full metal jacket where the hollow point is plugged and it won't even open, or it prematurely opens and I won't get a good enough penetration where now I've wounded an animal, I upset an animal, or I potentially haven't wounded, I just made it mad, and now it knows
Mm-hmm.
where I'm at, and that's a serious issue in itself. The
Right.
penetrator will still give me exactly what it's supposed to give me, 45 inches of penetration. The coefficient on our bullets are really good, especially the penetrators. And so that's why they're a little bit more pricier. When you pull it out of the wound cavity, when you pull it out of the gelatin, even when we tested it, it retains every bit of its shape. You can honestly take that bullet and reload it. That's how cool they are. So
Yeah.
the monolithic solid copper bullets, that's what they do. Now, let me get into this one for our solid copper. You will say, well, I see the Extreme Hunter. Why do you have Extreme Penetrator and then you also have Extreme Hunter? What's the difference? If you look at the pictures and you look at some of the testing and the load data, The extreme hunters are usually, if we're mixing apples to apples, I'm talking about bullet grain weight, everything like that. The hunter's sectional density is not as good as the penetrator, but the flutes are wider, meaning it opens up to me. I like the way it opens up the wound cavity because it's a little bit different of a cavitation. It does slow down faster and it doesn't penetrate near as deep as the penetrator. So the penetrator is for your optimal almost penetration to like a hard cast. Okay, like it's close to that for penetration depth. The hunter won't penetrate near as deep. So you'll say, well, what would you use that in? If you're using it in like bigger white-tailed deer, using it mountain lions, guys use it for mountain lions and their hunts and things like that. It's that's what people like them for because it won't over penetrate sometimes in certain animals. It will stop inside of them and it'll still open up a great wound cavity and it has a great energy dump into the animal and it penetrates similar to how that penetrator does, just not as far as the penetrator. So that's what makes those two different, the penetrator and the hunter. But they're great applications. But if I'm talking about, and as you said, big game, and we're talking like black bear, grizzly bear, I'm gonna tell you, hey, I'm gonna probably lean more towards the extreme penetrator and the hard cast than I am the hunter because the hunter slows down a little bit faster. And when you're talking about animals that size that could possibly come back and look for you if you upset them, I'm gonna use everything I can get. So the penetrator and the hard cast are top two sellers when it comes to those type of applications. And I know you asked about hollow points. I personally, this is not Underwood saying this. This is Caleb saying this. I personally am not a huge fan of hollow points and hunting applications, especially for bigger game. For one part, I just mentioned, if you're hunting, you're not always going to get that clean open shot. So now I can have potential expansion, premature expansion. I could potentially have where it's losing its energy a little bit faster. It's not penetrating deep enough. And therefore, now I have an angry animal at me, or I've wounded an animal that's taken off and I can't find it.
There you go.
You know, and that's dangerous. We don't want to ever wound an animal where they take off and we can't find it, and now the animal's bleeding out, is going to die somewhere in a day or two. That's not what we want. You know,
it puts our hounds will find it, and that often puts our hounds in very bad situations.
Oh, yeah.
You know, then you've got to get in there to take care of it, and you're creating a dangerous situation. And I wanted to bring up the hollow point because that seems to be something that is very readily available at big box stores without mentioning any names. But, you know, we stop in this big box store, we buy our license, and there is a box of ammo. And then I wanted to talk about these different types of bullets so that somebody who may not have a lot of experience or hasn't done the research knows the difference and which bullet they really need to be choosing. Because a lot of times that box of hollow points, even though it says Magnum right behind it, it's not going to be effective. That hollow point bullet was designed to prevent deep penetration for, to pass through and kill stuff you don't want to kill. I mean, home defense, law enforcement application, personal defense type stuff. Yep. You don't want casualties beyond what you're trying to cause there. So that's why I wanted to cover those. You did a great job on that. I want to talk about, we talk about the hollow point briefly. One of the things that we might fail to realize is, shoulder bone structure in an animal can cause that you may get punched through a shoulder, but once that hollow point goes through that, unless it crimp down on the tip, then it's going to expand, and that's where you're giving up your penetration. Is that correct? Hey, have you guys heard of Dogs Are Treed? That's that company that we keep plugging on this podcast because Dogs Are Treed supports your lifestyle. And they do that by contributing to all kinds of hound associations across the United States. But the way they really do it is they produce products that are useful for you and your hounds. When you look at their products like Dogs Are Hydrated, you're going to keep those dogs hydrated in this hot, hot weather. And then paws are protected. You got to keep a hound on its feet if you want them to keep hunting. And then their tie-outs, their premium tie-outs are out of this world. We just been talking about them on social media and stuff. Literally, Lauren says she can get dogs out of the truck and tied out in under 5 minutes. We're going to have to see a video on that. But check out Dogs Are Treed at dogsaretreed.com. Enter that promo code HXP 20% off. You're going to get 20% off your order on the best gear in the industry by the best company in the industry that's producing high-quality gear for you. Check out Dogs Are Treed. Also, check out Freedom Hunters. Fall is coming, folks. If you haven't made plans with me yet to coordinate a Freedom Hunters event, take America's heroes or returning veterans who've coming off active duty, recently home from deployment, or somebody that's a veteran or a Gold Star family member that wants to get into hunting, Freedom Hunters is the thing to pursue. I've been on several of these events. They're high class, they're high quality. You heard Seth talk about going to Canada, British Columbia with Freedom Hunters. He had a blast. We did a whole episode about it. You're missing the boat if you're not paying it back. Check out Freedom Hunters at freedomhunters.org.
That is correct. That is correct. And due to hollow points, if it does do what it's supposed to do, open up a great wound cavity, definitely. But it's just too many variables and factors when we're talking about hunting and we're talking about animals and we're talking about using our own hounds and hunting applications. You potentially could still wound the animal and not do what you needed to do. A lot of these animals are thick fur, thick hair, thick bone density and mass. A hollow point honestly be my last resort, honestly, when it comes to hunting. That hollow point is really geared, and I hate using it like this, but a hollow point is really geared to two-legged predators, and that is even kind of the past too now, and a lot of law enforcement find that out. So hollow points, they have their place, and I never try to deter people if they love hollow points, because you got some guys that are just, that's all they believe in. But there are a lot better options, and we offer that in the hardcast, penetrator, and the hunter.
I'll give you a perfect example, and I'm not shy about saying it, like a 38 Special that is in my bedroom has hollow points on it, because more than likely any threat that I'm going to be firing at inside my home, I've got a hallway there. My son's bedroom is down to the left, so I don't want a lot of penetration. I just need, I don't want that terminal blow through whatever I shoot penetration. That's my use for hollow points.
And that's where it should stop.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Let's talk about penetration real quick, because a lot of times houndsmen, when we're going into these situations and say, my hounds have a black bear stopped on the ground, and I'm also concerned about over penetration of going through and passing through and hitting one of my dogs. So what can you tell us about hard cast in that situation? And you're talking about 50 inches of penetration on soft, soft tissue type stuff. What is the real risk of choosing a hard cast bullet that's loaded too hot for that application?
The risk is there, because the hard cast, more times than not, unless it's just a huge grizzly we're talking black bear, the chance is there that it's going to pass through, unless you get a great front shot. I'm talking about front of the chest, but if you're talking about side of the shoulder, it's a great chance that it's going to go pass through the other side of that shoulder. And that's why we offer the penetrator, because it doesn't penetrate as deep as the hard cast, but it still replicates the hard cast because it doesn't deform, just as the hard cast, and it doesn't lose its energy until it hits whatever it's going into. So if that is the case, and people are out there saying, hey, listen, I got dogs, and then dogs are chasing these bears, or they're circling and surrounding these bears and things like that. What can I use that potentially won't hit my dog? I'm afraid that it could pass through this animal and it can hit my dog. I'm gonna tell you, well, then let's not talk about the hard cast, because the hard cast has an awesome chance of doing the pass through. Will it all the time? No, not at all. But my chances of that happening with a penetrator, the extreme penetrator, and better yet, the extreme hunter, are very, very so a lot less likely than it will be with the hard cast. The hard cast is just a very very heavy bullet that has a lot of momentum behind it. So it's going to punch through a lot of things and keep on going. without asking for forgiveness. And those are our animals and our pets, so we definitely don't want that to happen to our pets. So
Yeah, they're our hunting buddies. We
yeah,
got
I mean
some.
that's
We
our
make a
that's our babies.
Yeah, we make a living off of these hounds, and
Yeah.
they're valuable, and we don't want to take them out. So I did want to have that before somebody went and thinking, yeah, I'm shooting a 350. All I have is a 357 Magnum, so I'm going to get a hard cast P plus P to load in it for black bear. There's a good chance you're going to blow right through it, even with a 357 mag, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the 357 mag, we do it in 180 grain. It's a heavy grain bullet, and it definitely penetrates very deep. It's well over the 40 inches threshold, but we do offer the Extreme Hunter in 100 and I believe it's 125 grain projectile in 357 Magnum. I'm pretty certain on that.
Yeah.
And that's what if somebody says, hey, look, these are my two options. I have my hunting buddies, my dogs with me. What should I use? I'm gonna tell you, hey, use the Extreme Hunter or use our Extreme Penetrator, so we don't have to worry about pass through or over penetration in that black bear where we're potentially hitting one of those dogs, because we don't want that to happen at all.
Right. That's a good point, man.
Yeah.
I'm looking up the Underwood Extreme Hunter.
Okay.
I want to take a look.
Yeah.
At that bullet design there real quick.
Yeah, and you'll see it has wider flutes on it.
Yeah. So part of it was, part of the driving factor and my motivation again was, I've watched people choose these super large handgun rounds, or handgun calibers. And it got me to thinking, is it really necessary? And you're not going to argue the effectiveness of that big round.
Right.
So I really wanted to kind of gear this towards, the 44, comparing that 44 and that 10 millimeter. Like you said, I see a lot of media coming out about carrying that 10 millimeter in bear country. And I'm not a believer. I'm not a believer. I'm a more leaning more towards that 44 mag guy. So I wrote down I went through and wrote down the stats from your website on both, and I want to do some comparison and talk about what these numbers mean, and figure out how this bullet is still effective with these energy numbers. So, all right, I'm going to compare the 44 to the 10 millimeter, and we're going to talk hard cast.
Okay.
In the 44 Magnum, the weight of the bullet is 255 grains for your hard cast. The 10 millimeter is 200 grains.
Yep.
So right there, we have a 55 grain difference between the bullet weights.
Correct.
Then the thing that got me really looking was the velocity on the 44 is 1,350 feet per second.
Yep.
And the 10 millimeters traveling at 1,250 feet per second. So how can a lighter bullet traveling 100 feet slower per second be as effective or as good of a choice for me as the 44 mag?
Great question. Great question. Apples to apples is not. 44 mag is, as we say, it's a more powerful round than the 10 millimeter. 10 millimeter ballistically is very comparable to 41 mag. So when they came out 10 millimeter, it was to mimic 41 mag and a semi-auto. So we're in 41 mag range. However, when people look at our stats like that, I do want to caution people. The barrel length is one reason. And so on 10 millimeter, our velocity is done through a 5-inch barrel. And on our 44 mag is done, I want to say, between a 7.5-inch barrel. I want to say it's a 7.5-inch barrel. I could be a little wrong on that. It might be a little shorter than that, but it's over 5 inches for sure. It's in the 6 to 7.5. I believe it's 7.5 inches because it's through a Black Hawk, actually. It's through a Ruger Black Hawk.
Yeah.
So that's where we got our velocities from. Now, another thing, revolver guys compared to semi-automatic guys, and I don't have a dog in a fight. I like both. So I want to make sure I preface that. I don't have a dog in a fight. I like both.
I like the way you said we don't have a dog. This is a dog podcast, and you threw that in there, Caleb.
Yeah. So And I shoot 40. Well, I shoot 44 mag. I enjoy shooting the Ruger Blackhawk. I was thinking about buying a couple more personally, just because I love how much I shoot it at work and test through them and things like
Uh-huh.
that. The thing is you got to remember this: in the 44 mag, you're gonna have 6 rounds usually. Most 10 millimeter guys are going to shoot a 1911. Some of them will, which would be 9 rounds at the minimum. Now, most guys I talk to, Alaska, Wyoming, Montana, all of our friends all out there, they're shooting things with 15, 16 rounds magazines. Lighter gun, easier to find holsters, whether that's a chest rig, whether that's a side holster. Now, when I say barrel length, let me get into this. On revolvers, this has been my problem. This is Caleb's pet peeve with revolvers. And I have had to send personal revolvers back because of some issues. And this is one of the issues is you got to remember cylinder gap. Now, our test gun got a great cylinder gap. Let's say you, Joe out there in Montana, randomly Joe Smith, you have a firearm, 44 mag, 7.5-inch barrel, but your cylinder gap isn't as good. Guess what? We've already mitigated a lot of that muzzle velocity and energy now. If the cylinder gap is not good, I have seen 4-inch revolvers have faster velocities than 6-inch revolvers. I've honestly seen that because of the cylinder gap and things like that. So if the cylinder gap is good, then fine. But if it's not, you're going to have a problem. Another issue.
How would somebody know they've got a cylinder gap issue if you're just sitting there firing a
honestly,
pistol?
I mean, most guys will say, "Oh, well, you should measure your cylinder gap between that and your cylinder from the barrel to the cylinder." But honestly, if you're not astute in that realm, you really don't know what you're measuring. You don't know what you're looking for. You don't know what's good and what's bad. So then the easiest answer is to buy a cheap chronograph your velocities, and see and compare it to another revolver that potentially might have a great cylinder gap just to see. Now I know that's all circumstantial. What if you can't get a chronograph, or what if you can't get another revolver with a good cylinder gap? So all that is circumstantial, but those are things that plays a factor in revolvers. Another thing that plays a factor in a revolver is accuracy. Single shot, yeah, you're gonna be dead on. But what if you have to have a follow-up shot? What if you shot 4 of those rounds and you missed, and it's charging you? Now you're down to 2 rounds, as opposed to carrying 15 or 16 rounds in a semi-auto. So that's where guys get into that 10 millimeter 44 mag argument debate. Well, yeah, yours might be a little bit faster. You might have a great cylinder gap. But guess what, buddy? You missed 3 of those shots. Now you got 3 left, and that bear is charging at you.
Were you in the Army? Were you in the Army, Caleb?
I was not. My brother was a Marine.
Well, he ought to tell you then. The Army's spray and pray. Marines 1 shot, 1 kill.
Yeah, well, my brother. Oh my God!
I've got fans. I'll get all kinds of hate mail for that one.
Oh well, my brother. He swears he's a rifleman. He swears he is the greatest rifleman
we all
in the
do.
world. Yeah,
we all do.
There's some things I can't repeat that he says, but he went in during Desert Storm, Desert Shield, and fought 9 years for this amazing country. It's a great country, and I thank you for your service, by the way. And he was a state trooper as well. He's my oldest brother, and oh my God, that guy, I have him sight in some of my rifles, and I have to hear about it for 6 straight hours of how I need him to sight it in, and how he's a rifleman. He shoots prone, and I'm like, oh my God, just sight the gun in.
Yeah, I hear you, man. No, I had to throw that out there. I'll tell you another way. I'll tell you another way to check cylinder gap is if you're ever standing on a firing line with a bunch of police officers, and they're all shooting revolvers, and you're feeling unburnt powder hitting you in the side of the head. There's probably a good chance that old worn out revolver right next to you has got a real bad cylinder gap.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I've been there. We used to shoot the line up, a foot or so apart, man. The guy shooting next to you. Every time he pull the trigger, you're trying to do a time, and every time his gun goes off, you're getting powdered in the side of the head with unburnt powder, and you're just like, crap, that hurts.
I didn't even think about that. I didn't think about that. I tell you another thing that plays a factor is we said barrel lengths. Now most guys, especially out in Alaska, Montana, and Wyoming, there's some semi-autos that have a lot longer barrel than 5 inches, so you're gonna pick up velocities. But we don't test on those length of barrels because then we're kind of cheating the velocity. We don't want to cheat. So we want to make sure our velocities are what they say they are. And if you get better and faster velocities, hey, kudos to you, congratulations. Like that's kind of what we want.
So how much drop are you seeing due to that cylinder gap in some of these? Because if you're talking about like the muzzle energy in a 44 for the hard cast is 1032 foot pounds,
Yeah,
and the 10 millimeter is only 694 foot pounds.
right.
So how much energy is can be lost due to that one main factor right there?
You know, and
What have you
that's
seen?
situational because the energy goes off of your velocity. I've seen deviations of velocities with bad cylinder gaps all the way up to 200 feet per second slower
Hmm.
than what's advertised. But then you test it through one that has a great cylinder gap, or even a shorter barrel, and you got a faster velocity. You're hitting your target feet per second, so you know it's not the powder charge. You definitely know it's your cylinder gap. So when you're talking about that, you're talking about a big deviation in foot pounds of energy. But I will say this, and this is a credit to 44 Mag and what we're able to produce at Underwood. That's a huge number for your foot pounds of energy.
You bet.
Uh,
It really
it's
is.
impressive. You're
Most of
talking
them
about
are
over 1,000
900.
foot pounds of energy. That's remarkable.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of the ammo I looked at was in the 900 range for a
Yeah,
44 mag, and it could be as low as 775 foot pounds. So,
yeah,
um,
correct.
anytime you're climbing over 1,000 pounds of energy right there,
Hmm.
then you need to be an experienced shooter to be able to reliably hit what you're shooting at,
Yes, yes,
especially after the first shot. You know,
definitely.
yeah.
Definitely, and in most of those revolvers that can handle that type of pressure, because it's that semi spec. But there's some revolvers we will tell you, hey, don't shoot this revolver in 44 mag because your casings might bulge a little bit. It doesn't do well with it. We don't like the way that the frame is maybe constructed.
Right.
So you need to have a full steel frame, a very well built revolver, and you're talking about handling that pressure and that load and then we say, "Hey, this does a good job." It's a very remarkable round, and 44 mag is still very popular with the revolver guys. I like 44 mag a lot. People get worried about the recoil. The recoil is not unbearable.
Hmm.
I've seen, and I'm not trying to be sexist, but I've seen women 120 pounds shoot 44 mag without an issue.
Right. Well, that's one of the things I was going to go into, and I failed to mention early,
What's that?
is we've got several female hunters out here
Yeah.
that are looking for that. So that's an advantage for the 10 millimeter. I've shot and trained, um, female police officers over the
Hmm.
years that just simply didn't have the muscle structure, the bone
Yeah.
structure, the hand size to be able to grip
Yeah.
the handgun properly, and that all affects their ability to put rounds on target.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you know, it's like the old thing. I always train my kids to shoot before they ever picked up the first shotgun and shot their first turkey. I just had them dialed in with a 22 rifle.
Yep.
Side alignment, sight picture, squeeze the trigger, follow
Yep.
through, and no recoil. They
Yes.
didn't even know that a shotgun had recoil until they pulled the trigger and they had a dead turkey in front of them.
And that's great. That's great. And then another thing too, as you were mentioning, is um, with people that might be slender or slight or smaller in frame and stature and things like that. If you shoot the 44 mag, and let's say you have smaller hands, you're just warm, small hands, you don't have a tight grip or maybe even the strongest of wrist, it will be harder for you to get back realigned as
Mm-hmm.
far as in sight picture, as far as in getting back where you need to be at if you have to have a follow up shot. Now,
Yep.
the beauty is most 44 mags and the 44 mags that we recommend are most of them are single shot 44 mags, which makes it a little easier as far as an accuracy, especially for that first shot.
Mm-hmm.
But it will take a little bit more time to get back to that second shot because now you gotta refocus, get
Right.
yourself back composed, pull that hammer back. Now pull the trigger. Whereas as you were speaking on the 10 millimeter, you just pull the trigger. Pull the
Yeah.
trigger, you pull the trigger, and you pull the trigger. And there are some revolvers that are in 10 millimeter now. Actually, Smith & Wesson
Really.
came out with 610, and I think Ruger's came out with a 10 millimeter revolver as well. So if people want revolvers, there's 10 millimeter revolvers as well out there for you.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah,
Wasn't
yeah, I
aware of
believe
that.
I believe Ruger just came out one not too long ago. I had a customer call me, I looked it up and I saw it. Now I do know Smith came back out with the 610, which from all implications I've been hearing is that they've been selling well for the last couple of years. So there are 10 millimeter revolvers out there.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see what I got next on my things I was going to ask you about here. We kind of went through the. Let's compare hard cast to your flat nose ammo, and we'll start with the 10 millimeter. So your 10 millimeter hard cast is 200 grains. Your jacket flat nose is 200 grains. Everything actually is exactly the same here. 1250 feet per second, 1250 feet per second, 694 foot-pounds in both. So the 10 millimeter actually for your hard cast and your jacketed flat nose, you're going to get the same penetration. So why go with one over the other, Caleb, in the 10 millimeter?
And without me looking, I want to tell you that the hard cast should have a better sectional density, I believe.
Okay.
And the reason why is because the meat plate on that hard cast is a little bit wider than that full metal jacket. So therefore, you're going to have a better wound cavity throughout that travel. So that's one reason right there. And honestly, without going out shooting both into gelatin and seeing how far I can get both of them to penetrate, I would be surprised if the hard cast still doesn't out penetrate a little bit of that full metal jacket, just because the hard cast is a little bit harder to stop with the coating that it has, but then also with that big a piece of lead. I don't know, it's just something about lead being flung at that speed. It's hard to see something else penetrate as close to it or next to it. But I want to tell you the sectional density should be better on that hard cast, which does a little better. Plus, the hard cast is harder still because of your Brunel hardness. So potentially, eventually, something could slow down that full metal jacket. Even though it performs like the hard cast, you still can have something that eventually, slows it down some. Where the hard cast, it's still going to truck along a little bit longer and a little bit faster, a little bit more, I should say.
So when we're talking about this full metal, this jacketed flat nose, what we're actually talking about is a piece of lead that's covered with another type of metal.
Mm-hmm.
And yours is copper, or is it what's your jacket made of in your bullet?
It is a actual metal, full metal. It's not plated. It is a full metal, and that's where
is it a trade secret?
It's a little bit.
All right.
A little bit.
Yeah, I get it, man. I get it.
But both
you know the competition's already bought one and sent that sucker to a metallurgist and broke it down.
When people ask me, what powder are you guys using? You guys are in Matt and Sammy Specs and nobody else is being able to produce the same stuff. What powder are you using? I say, hey, look, it's a proprietary powder, man. I don't know. I mean, it's oh, that's what you're going to give me. I'm like, yeah, that's all I can tell you.
Yeah. One thing you did say, you talked about it earlier about wound channel and terminal penetration there, and so how you talked about, like in the hard cast, producing this big, what'd you call that, wound something?
I call it a wound cavity, and I also call it the sectional density, which is what we see. The hard cast also, a lot of the hard cast lead guys love to talk about the meat plate, which is basically one end of the projectile to the other, that flat nose, basically. How wide is it? Yeah. And people love to talk about that. And then also when you're talking about lead, you got to get on the Brunel hardness, because people want to know, how hard is that lead? How hard is that hard cast? So therefore they are confident in knowing, hey, if I hit bones, it's going to bust through that bone and it's going to continue to go. If I hit through 2 sets of lungs and through some fat tissue and things like that, it's still going to continue to go and nothing's going to slow it down. And that's why people love to talk about that with that wound cavity, that Brunel hardness, and what's my sectional density numbers. Higher the density, the better the wound cavity.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Let's compare the 44 mag hard cast to your flat nose, jacket flat nose. 44 mag hard cast is 255 grains. The jacket flat nose is 245 grains. So we're giving up a little bit there. Yeah. Hard cast on velocity is 1350 feet per second. And you pick up some speed with the flat nose at 1450. So you got that. But then you got another trade-off right here. You got the 44 mag generating 1,032 foot-pounds, and then you've got the hard or the flat nose generating 1144, so you're picking up there too.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean to Joe Bear Hunter that is choosing his bullet?
Honestly, you're going to come down to, do I want a heavier bullet moving a little slower that might not penetrate as deep now as that full metal jacket, because the full
Okay.
metal jacket is a little lighter and faster, and it has weight. It has over 100 foot-pounds of energy.
Mm-hmm.
So that bullet, in theory, should penetrate deeper for you because it's moving faster, even though it's not a hard cast.
Mm-hmm.
Because your energy levels are at 1100 and some change compared to just 1030.
Are your 10 grains in bullet weight making up for that and making that hard cast penetrate deeper? What
You
do you
know,
think?
that's one of those things where I like pepperoni, you like sausage. Like, what do I see and what do I like?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say this: without doing the testing, I don't think it shows it on our website on the one projectile. The hardcast, it doesn't show it. It might. Just correct me if it does. It's okay. The coefficient. So that full metal jacket is going to shoot a little higher. It's going to shoot a little bit flatter, and it's not going to drop as fast as that hardcast will drop also. So there's another advantage for hunters. If we're shooting 50 yards out, there's an advantage. And yeah, will I shoot a little bit higher? Yes. So I have to make sure I'm adjusted for that. So I always tell people, man, if you're going to hunt with this stuff, buy another box. Just bite the bullet, pun intended, buy another box and see where your sight alignment is at, because it is going to shoot different than the hard cast. Even though that 10 grains, you're saying, well, just 10 grains. That hard cast is a different shot. It's going to shoot lower. So you need to see where you're going to be shooting at on that full metal jacket. And when you do see that, you will be, I believe, really happy with the results at greater distances than you will be with the hard cast, because hard cast will drop a little bit more than that full metal jacket.
Mm-hmm.
So
all right.
Advantage.
So yeah, thanks, man. I just wanted to throw those numbers out
there.
Yeah,
definitely.
Compare some rounds that people might be looking at.
Yeah.
And trying to make that right bullet selection. And I think we'll just wrap this up by boiling it down to some, we've talked a lot about numbers and maybe people's heads are swimming here, but what kind of recommendations could you make on caliber choices as they pertain to ammo availability at this point? I know Underwood's fully stocked, or you guys are keeping a good stock. I know I looked at some of the other supply houses, and they were stocking a wide variety of your ammo and a lot of calibers. But when you get right down to the brass tacks of it, a 454 or a 480 Ruger, man, that ammo is hard to find. And when you do find it, sometimes you got to take out a bank loan to get it. I mean, it's take out a second mortgage. So for the person, the hunter that's coming into this thing, and they're trying to find that round, that caliber that is going to do the job that they need it to do, what's your recommendation for us?
Personally, Caleb always tells people, go with what's easy to get, or that's popular. So 480 Ruger, that's so interesting you mentioned that. A lot of people don't even know there's a 480 Ruger, unless you're just a serious will gun hunter, you're really out there hunting, you're taking trips to Africa or traveling the world in the United States and hunting serious. A lot of people don't know that. Or 454 Casull, or is anybody shooting 470 5 line ball or anything like that? Like, people are like, man, I didn't know all that was out there. So I always tell people, go with what you can shoot accurately. Go out there with what you can handle with recoil, and go out there and shoot what you're confident in. So I say, and what's available. So 44 Magnum is always going to be there. The day 44 Magnum dies, then really the revolver world. I mean, 44 Magnum is very popular still, as it was back in Dirty Harry, as you alluded to. It's very popular. 460 Smith & Wesson is not as popular as 44 Mag. It's not. Will it get the job done? By far, yes. But will the 44 Mag get the job done, and most people can handle that recoil and get used to it and find ammunition available? Yes. And it's not as expensive as other ammunition. Because, I mean, hey, look, at Underwood, we know we produce ammunition at a premium, and we got a superior ammunition throughout over a lot of companies, and some of it does reflect in price. So, but we're very competitive in 44 Magnum price with everybody else. And what you're getting, you're honestly kind of getting a steal. Or if you say, hey, look, I'm not a wheel gun guy. I want to go to semi-auto. Then 10 millimeter. I wouldn't go less than 10 millimeter if I'm talking about hunting. But 44 mag, 357 Magnum, even though 357 Magnum, I don't understand. In the last 2 years, it's been a difficult round for a lot of companies to handle and have. But we are in stock on it, and we're running huge numbers as far as in getting in stock. So if you want to do 357 mag, you always have that option. And the cool thing too about it is the thing about revolvers that I like that semi-autos can't do for the most part. Now some semi can, but for the most part is if I get a 44 mag, guess what? I can shoot 44 special if I want to, just to get used to that gun, the sights. Now the recoil is completely different, but I can do that. Or I can go to 357 mag and shoot 38 specials if I want to, just to get used to that double action trigger pull, or getting used to that single action trigger pull and where I need to be at and where I have to be. So those are great things that makes those things very appealing, because you could get other calibers and shoot them in those firearms. Same thing with 454 and things like that if you're into that, or 460 Smith & Wesson. You can shoot lighter calibers for the gun just to kind of get used to it. So revolvers are very versatile, and they don't get the credit for being so versatile. But I would say, you know what, revolver world, 357 mag, 44 mag, 41 mag, which we do produce, and we do produce 41 mag, and greater, yes. But go with what you can get. Go where you can go to your local gun store, your local, store that's in your neighborhood or your area. You might be in a small community or a great size, a large community. Go where you can go and say, hey, I need some 44 ammo right now. I want to go shoot 44 mag, so let me get some ammo for it.
Right.
But if you go in the store and say, hey, I need 454 Casull, people are going to be like,
never heard of it.
Stores, you know what's crazy? It's most gun stores will tell you, I never even heard of that. Or if you say, hey, man, I need some 480 Ruger. I need to go punch some paper, see where I'm at. I need to see where my target acquisition at. They're going to say, I don't know what 480 Ruger is.
Right.
So go where you can get ammo at. Go with what you're comfortable in. And if you like those 480 Rugers, I say more power to you, because guess what? Underwood Ammo makes 480 Ruger, and we have it in stock usually all the time.
Yeah. Well, Caleb, you've been a huge help and helping us kind of decipher some of the technicalities and technology around bullets. It's a hard thing to walk into a big box store and find what you need. And I think that's the most important thing, regardless of what we choose to carry. There's a few key things there. Be familiar with the platform you're shooting.
Yeah.
And, you talked about that with being able to shoot 38 special or 44 special out of a 44. You've got to be familiar with it. And I'm talking hundreds of rounds. And being familiar with that platform, no matter what it is. If you're carrying a semi-auto, you need to talk about firearms maintenance, how to maintain keep it clean, and you need to talk about immediate action drills to clear malfunctions in that firearm pretty quick. Yeah. So those are all things, podcast topics for a future episode. But I think we did a good job of talking about bullets and finding the right bullet for what we're shooting.
I'm very honored to be on here. Underwood is very honored. We take it serious that we produce ammunition that hunters will get every bang for their buck, and we mean that pun, every bit of it. So, we will continue to produce a superior ammunition, and every day we're getting better, and every day we choose to get better. And ballistics show what we're doing. YouTube shows what we do, and even people think, well, are they paying these people to say this about the ammo? Not at all. And it's showing that different hunts and things like that and testimonials from people are out there. And I tell people, if you haven't heard of the brand, or if you're just learning about our brand, hey, just Google us and you will find all kind of information and things like that. And I'll tell you this before we end. If you have an issue, we make it right. There's no question about it. We will make it right. And we take customer service very serious. There's not a day that you can't call us that we don't pick up the phone. If we don't, we call you right back. And most companies, they don't do that anymore. So
I can attest to that.
Yeah.
I called a few other companies. A couple of them didn't even list a phone number. I left a message. I sent emails. And I called Underwood and Underwood, somebody actually picked up the phone.
Yeah.
And they said, hey, we know who you need to talk to. And Caleb called me back. I was like, what is going on? I feel like I'm living in the Twilight Zone here. Have we dialed the clock back 30 years? You know, what's going on?
That's true. That is very true right there.
Yeah.
That is true. We take it serious, and it's an honor to be on here, and I hope you have us back on sometime soon.
You bet. It'd be great. If you're a firearms, you told me that you're a firearms trainer and an instructor. We might just have to do a podcast about that.
Sounds great. Looking forward to it.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Caleb, and hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you. Will do.